Picture a lone, tracked fortress rumbling through a desolate Eastern European plain under heavy overcast skies that press down like the weight of impending doom. Its twin 30mm autocannons suddenly swiveling skyward with the sharp whine of hydraulic servos engaging as the 1RL-144 hotshot radar locks onto a low-flying NATO helicopter 3 kilometers distant, unleashing a storm of 5,000 rounds per minute that lights the horizon with glowing tracers, shredding rotor blades like tissue paper, while 8 9M311 surface-to-air missiles streak upward in deadly synchronized harmony, turning an AH-64 Apache gunship into a plummeting fireball trailing black smoke before it can loose a single hellfire. But then, the unthinkable unfolds in heart-stopping clarity. The system's own radar overloads under aggressive electronic jamming pulses. Missiles veer wildly into the ground, exploding harmlessly in massive dirt plumes that shower the crew with pebbles, and the Tunguska operators scramble desperately across their cramped console-lit compartment as American artillery shells begin walking methodically toward their position with earth-shaking concussions, revealing the terrifying paradox of a machine engineered as the ultimate sky shield against jets and helicopters, yet brutally vulnerable to ground threats, saturation drone swarms, and the relentless evolution of cheap electronic countermeasures. This was the 2K-22 Tunguska, the Soviet Union's boldest and most audacious Cold War gamble, a revolutionary hybrid gun-missile air defense system born from raw paranoia over American A-10 Thunderbolt IIs and AH-64 Apache gunships tearing through Warsaw-packed tank columns, a technological marvel that fused ferocious autocannon fire with precision-guided rockets on a single mobile platform to create layered death from heaven, yet whose development saga brimmed with near cancellations, radar blackouts, missile misfires, inter-bureau rivalries, and budget battles that nearly consigned it to the scrap heap before it ever protected a single T-72 or SA-13 battery. What unfolds across the next 40 minutes is the exhaustive, pulse-pounding chronicle of this armored sentinel, from the frantic Yom Kippur War scramble to counter low-level NATO air power that exposed every flaw in existing defenses, through chief designer Arkady Shipunov's Tula KBP bureau battling relentlessly to marry high-rate guns and finicky missiles on an MTLB-derived chassis under impossible timelines, to the brutal Donguz and Kapustin Yar trials where electronic gremlins, freezing Siberian blizzards, scorching Volga summers, and skeptical generals tested human endurance to breaking points, all set against the backdrop of a decaying Soviet empire racing against its own technological obsolescence and economic collapse, where every engineering triumph threatened to birth 2 new crises lurking just beyond the next test cycle. The early 1970s crashed over Soviet military planners like a cold shower from Sinai battlefields, where Yom Kippur War debriefings smuggled out of Damascus and Cairo painted a nightmare vision of motorized rifle divisions suddenly naked under skies ruled by low-flying Western attack aircraft and wire-guided missiles that rendered massed armor obsolete overnight. Egyptian Third Army T-55 regiments rolling confidently toward Suez Canal suddenly dissolved under Israeli low-altitude Skyhawk dives, dropping laser-guided Rockeye cluster bombs that carpeted tank parks in 500-pound fireballs, while hovering Bell AH-1 Cobra gunships slung tow missiles from 2-kilometer standoff, their M234 grenade launchers hosing infantry screens as SA-6 gainful batteries tracked futilely against terrain-masked pop-up attacks. ZSU-23-4 Shilkas, once the undisputed queens of low-level intercepts, with 4 23mm cannons hammering 8,000 rounds per minute, now looked like relics, their gun dish radars blind to helicopters hugging treetops below 200 meters, tungsten-cored shells bouncing harmlessly off the A-10 Thunderbolt II's titanium bathtub armor, designed specifically to scoff at 14.5mm heavy machine guns, and maximum 2-kilometer engagement envelopes, leaving forward tank regiments exposed to circling gunships armed with 30mm GA-8 Avengers that could stitch T-72 upper hulls at 1-kilometer slant range with 225-gram depleted uranium penetrators traveling at Mach 1.2. Brezhnev's Defense Ministry war room in Moscow overflowed with grainy 8mm reconnaissance films projected on smoke-hazed screens, showing Syrian Sagar teams inflicting grievous losses on Israeli Centurions during Valley of Tears, but crumbling utterly against massed helicopter assaults that flanked static SAM sites, prompting General Secretary Leonid Ilyich Brezhnev to pound tables during late-night Stavka sessions, demanding a revolutionary point defense system for regimental air cover, capable of swatting drones, cruise missiles, attack helicopters, and fighter bombers in forests, urban rubble, rolling marches, or blinding blizzards, with reaction times under 6 seconds from detection to destruction, operational across -50 to +50 degrees Celsius swings, and mobile enough to shadow T-80 battalions at 60 kilometers per hour, all while NATO reconnaissance confirmed F-111 Aardvarks and Panavia Tornadoes perfecting pop-up strikes with AGM-65 Mavericks that outranged every existing gun system by 3 kilometers. On June 8, 1970, Ministry of Defense Decree No. 196 formally tasked Tula's KBP Instrument Design Bureau under Chief Designer Arkady Georgievich Shipunov, a gaunt, bespectacled genius born in 1927 amid Oriol region's collectivization famines, who had hand-tooled aviation cannons in wartime Ural factories under blackout conditions and partnered with Vasily Gryazev to birth the revolutionary GSH 30mm series arming MiG-29s, with creating the Shilka successor, codenamed Tunguska after Siberia's infamous meteor crater, a hybrid beast merging doubled autocannon firepower with guided surface-to-air missiles to blanket regiments from point-blank drones to 5-kilometer standoff jets. Shipunov, then 43, with calloused hands from years wrestling prototypes, assembled his war council in Tula's concrete bunker drafting rooms overlooking snow-choked Oka river bends. Weapons virtuoso Vasily Petrovich Grazev, sketching dual-barreled 2A38 autocannons with independent recoil systems, sustaining 3,900 rounds per minute bursts of 115-gram high-explosive incendiary fragmentation shells at 960 meters per second muzzle velocity. Radar specialists from NII Automatiki developing the 1RL-144 hotshot C-band phased array scanning 30 degrees elevation across 360 azimuth to detect 500 meter per second targets at 16 kilometers slant, even through ground clutter. Chassis engineers from Minsk Tractor Works up-armoring the GM-597-5 hull derived from mass-produced MTLB multi-purpose tractors to haul 24 tons of electronics, ammunition, and hydraulics over 65-degree slopes and 1.5-meter fords. Optics masters from Lomo perfecting the stabilized 1A29 electro-optical sights with laser rangefinders for gun-only engagements, and software pioneers at MKB Strela programming the 1A26 digital fire control computer to fuse radar, optical, and laser inputs into seamless target prioritization, allocating guns to close threats and missiles to distant ones. Initial concept sketches sprawled across blackboards and drafting tables through 1970 winter nights. A low-slung turret barely 1.5 meters tall atop the familiar tracked box housing twin cannons capable of 4-kilometer low-angle intercepts against Harriers, flanked by 4 ready 9M311 missiles per side, with radio command guidance updated 20 times per second and proximity fuses detonating rod warhead payloads within 5 meters of maneuvering jets. the entire system cued by a surveillance radar tracking up to 40 air targets, while IFF interrogators flashed coded challenges to prevent friendly MiG-27 intercepts turning into blue-on-blue tragedies over contested airspace. Paper tigers quickly met brutal engineering reality in Shipunov's smoke-filled prototype bays by late 1970 as the unholy challenge of cramming high-rate autocannons, cryogenic-cooled missile launchers, kilowatt phased array radar, and digital computers into a turret ring only 2 meters wide crashed against physics and metallurgical limits. The two A-38 Gryazev-Shipunov cannons demanded dual-feed ammunition belts snaking through armored conduits, carrying 1,900 rounds of mixed A-670 radar-fused, high-explosive incendiary tracer shells weighing 115 grams apiece, their combined recoil impulses peaking at 150 kilonewtons, threatening to capsize the GM chassis during sustained 20-second bursts, while 9 M311 missiles required stabilized inertial platforms surviving 10G launches and infrared seekers chilled to -180 degrees Celsius against solar glare, their solid-fuel boosters generating 500 kilogram thrust for 8-kilometer terminal velocities. Early wooden mock-ups in Tula's cavernous halls saw burly machinists physically wrestling cannon mock-ups to verify 60-degree-per-second traverse rates matching radar slew speeds. Radome prototypes rotating through simulated chaff barrages dispensed from pneumatic launchers, missile pods venting hypergolic propellant fumes that etched corrosion pits into nearby optical windows, each attempted fix spawning cascades of new headaches, like reinforced trunnion bearings adding 1.8 tons that spiked ground pressure to 0.8 kilograms per square centimeter, softening traction in rain-soaked Volga mud during preliminary mobility loops where prototypes bellied on their sponsons 300 meters from start lines. 1974 heralded first steel prototypes rolling off Ulyanovsk mechanical plant assembly lines under floodlit secrecy, their olive-drab hulls camouflaged with disruptive patterns as test batteries rumbled 200 kilometers southeast to Donguz proving grounds' endless steps pocked with concrete bunkers and drone recovery nets, where MiG-21U target conversions screamed in at 250 meters altitude, simulating A-10 Thunderbolt II ingress profiles. Opening salvos left evaluators slack-jawed, twin cannons barking in perfectly synchronized thunder that registered 4.2 Richter on distant seismographs, orange tracer streams arcing through gathering dusk to 4 kilometers, stitching drone fuselages with 120-gram high-explosive incendiary rounds that detonated on radar proximity, while inaugural 9 M311 launches streaked true at 6 kilometers slant, infrared seekers locking despite evasive flares as proximity fuses bloomed shrapnel coronas, disassembling airframes mid-belly crawl over mock T-72 formations. Elation crested momentarily as layered engagements showcased the hybrid genius, guns shredding close-in drone hordes at 1 kilometer while missiles picked off trailing leaders at 5 kilometers, but shattered like Shilka barrels under sustained fire when ECM trials exposed mortal flaws. American-style chaff clouds from RR-180 chaff flare dispensers blinded frontal 1RL-144 arcs for 12 seconds, missile seekers confused by MJU-7 flares veering toward infrared decoys on the steppe, gun stabilization servos lagging during high-speed 500-knot tracks, inducing 20-meter overshoots at 3-kilometer slant range against maneuvering targets. Shipunov's engineers plunged into 24/7 counteroffensives through 1975 snows, hand-writing 1A26 fire control algorithms on room-sized computers to introduce adaptive frequency hopping, cycling radar bands every pulse repetition frequency to pierce chaff veils. Gryazev redesigning dual feed mechanisms with titanium anti-jam pawls that ejected dud casings under 3,000 RPM vibration loads. Lomo fitting backup 1A29 laser rangefinders for optical-only drone intercepts when radar blacked out. Test cycles at Donguz escalated brutally, prototypes churning through 500-round bursts that scorched barrels to 900 degrees Celsius before liquid cooling manifolds extended life to 8,000 rounds. Missile pods reloaded under time trials, revealing loader crews wrestling 9-kilogram rockets into rails slick with hydraulic leaks. Radar calibration drifts corrected via portable generators humming through -30 nights, where crews huddled over consoles with electric mittens, breath-fogging CRT screens displaying ghost tracks from distant thunderstorms. 1977 brought existential threats as Afghanistan border tensions simmered and Brezhnev-era Politburo budget hawks circled Tunguska's spiraling costs, one battery devouring 3 times a Shilka company's rare earth magnets for inertial gyros, gallium arsenide amplifiers for hotshot arrays, and precision waveguide tolerances rivaling Book M1 launchers, pitting Shipunov's team against VPK apparatchiks and Air Defense Force generals championing SA-11 Gadfly pure missile batteries with 12-kilometer envelopes and wheeled mobility. Heated ministry briefings saw Shipunov pacing with dog-eared Yom Kippur transcripts and Syrian Shilka kill tallies, arguing passionately that guns remained irreplaceable for pop-up drones, saturation raids, and hovering gunships where missiles reloaded too slowly, while rivals countered the tracked platform's mud-prone chassis, sacrificed electronics better suited to ZSU-23-4 upgrades or SA-13 Gopher truck mounts. Prototypes languished under snow-weighted tarps through 1978 grain import crises and Olympic construction booms, Shipunov's engineers moonlighting on EMP-hardened cabling immune to EF-111 jammers, laser-illuminated missile variants for optical backup, and chassis reinforcements with 8 additional road wheels per side to distribute 24-ton combat loads without belly-down strandings. Spring 1979's pivotal Donguz redemption trial unfolded under Ustinov's watchful eyes, a single Tunguska battery facing 24 simulated low-level raiders in waves mimicking A-10 packs rolling under SA-11 ceilings. Lead drones at 5 kilometers plucked from skies by 9 M311 salvos blooming rod warhead coronas amid evasive flares. Close escorts shredded at 2 kilometers by 30mm tempests, forcing overspeed jinks that exposed bellies to fragmentation, achieving 94% kills across 200 drone sorties that left evaluators scribbling feverishly as cannons sustained 5,000 round-per-minute hellfire without feed failures. Defense Minister Dmitry Fyodorovich Ustinov, pacing the observation bunker with stopwatch in hand, authorized full-rate production September 8, 1982, just as Reagan's Star Wars rhetoric chilled Moscow corridors and SS-20 deployment deadlines loomed. Serial units flooded airborne regiments by 1983, first batteries equipping the Blue Division's air mobile brigades, training Fulda Gap counterstrikes, where NATO wargames projected A-10 squadrons of 24 aircraft rolling in at 200 knots under SA-11 ceilings to strafe T-80 columns with GAU-8 hail before wild weasels suppressed SA-11 remnants. GM-597-5 chassis proved deceptively nimble at 65 km per hour sustained road speeds across cobblestone autobahns, hydropneumatic suspension compressing to 20 centimeters ground clearance for 1.5-meter stream fords without flooding the ZMZ-826 V12 diesel bay. Yet frontline crews battled chronic gremlins. Turret ring hydraulic seals weeping fluid after 60-degree-per-second traverses tracking pop-up Harriers. Missile pods accumulating frost in -40-degree Baltic watches requiring resistive heaters drawing precious alternator amps. cannon barrels chrome flaring after 200-round bursts until 1985 liquid cooling manifolds extended barrel life to 12,000 rounds with muzzle velocities stabilized at 960 meters per second. Four-man crews endured sweatbox purgatories within the 1.6 by 2-meter turret fighting compartment. Commander correlating surveillance feeds on flickering multifunction CRTs displaying 40-track symbology. Gunlayer slaving 1A29 stabilized optics to monopulse radar tracker via 1A26 algorithms processing 100 targets per minute with 92% first shot hits. Radar operator filtering ground clutter and ECM ghosts through digital notch filters. Driver nursing the 500-horsepower mill through 500-liter diesel thirst that limited patrols to 200 kilometers before refueling amid forests where branches snagged whip antennas. Ammunition stowage pressed claustrophobia. 1,900 rounds in dual belts of mixed APDS for drones, HEIT for jets, and FRAG-T for helicopters, crammed beside 8 ready missiles and 24 reloads in hull bins. Cordite haze from 20-second cannon bursts, choking primary ventilation until crewmen rotated fresh air scoops, leaving sweat-soaked telegracas clinging during summer maneuvers where internal temperatures spiked to 62 degrees Celsius. Afghan proving grounds from 1984 tested metal against Stinger-armed Mujahideen ambushes, Tunguska batteries shielding Kabul's Pantsir convoys from shoulder-fired infrared SAMs lofted from ridgelines, 30mm storms hosing suspected launch points at 800 meters slant, while 9 M311M claimed low Mi-8 hip scouts probing perimeter gaps, though Pamir mountain trails exposed chassis limits, track pins shearing on house-sized boulders dislodged by Spetsnaz demo charges, radar antennas crumpling against granite overhangs during hasty retreats, diesel intakes clogging with talcum dust that starved injectors after 50 kilometers march. Export lifelines sustained upgrades into 2K-22M baseline of 1990, doubling missile capacity to 16 via twin quad launchers per side, with improved 9M311M radio command missiles resistant to flares via dual-mode seekers, 2 A-38M cannons incorporating gas outlet recoil reducers, boosting muzzle velocity to 900 meters per second for 4.5-kilometer low-angle intercepts against Harrier jumps, 1 RL-144M surveillance radar detecting low observable profiles at 18 kilometers through deciduous foliage, digital IFF averting fratricide during mixed Shilka Tunguska air defense belts rolling with T-72 regiments. South Ossetia 2008 scripted combat baptism by fire against precision munitions. Georgian S-25 Frogfoot squadrons diving on Skinvali barracks with S-8 unguided rockets and Cab 500 laser-guided bombs met by Tunguska M1 batteries deployed near Java Pass. 30mm hail ripping fuselages and vertical tails at 2 kilometers altitude, while upgraded 9M311M1 radio-fused missiles detonated 5-meter shrapnel coronas around wings at 8 kilometers slant, despite aggressive ECM saturation from Georgian Buk M1 batteries. Confirmed claims of 3 Frogfoots amid burning MiG wrecks littering Roki Tunnel approaches. Syrian Hmeimim airbase rotations from 2015 pitted upgraded variants against Turkish Bayraktar TB2 reconnaissance drones and Israeli Delilah loitering munitions probing perimeter gaps. Twin cannons chewing quadcopters at 1-kilometer slant with A670 fused rounds, while missiles struggled against decoying infrared flares, exposing seeker vulnerabilities that prompted emergency M2 field kits with gallium nitride phased arrays resistant to A-18 Growler spot jamming and vertical launch tubes for Tomahawk-class cruise missile intercepts at 12 kilometers. Donguz Proving Ground odysseys scarred Tunguska legend through trial-by-fire catastrophes that tested Shipunov's resolve. 1981 booster malfunctions sending 9 M311 rockets skyward, only to tumble inert after 5-second burns from faulty thrust vector actuators. Recovery teams combing charred tundra for telemetry wreckage under portable floodlights, while gusting winds scattered fin sections across 2 square kilometers, or Kapustin Yar ECM infernos simulating F-14 pods and EF-111 jammers that locked hotshot arrays blind for 23 seconds until Shipunov's frequency-agile patches restored monopulse tracking in 3.2 seconds against 500-knot maneuvering targets. Crew endurance trials pushed physiological limits, minus 45 degrees Siberian nights freezing turret hydraulic rams solid, requiring ether torches and boiling water for thaw cycles every 4 hours. Volga summer heat waves spiking fighting compartment interiors to 65 degrees Celsius, where loaders collapsed mid-belt swap from heat exhaustion, with pulse rates hitting 180 beats per minute. Infamous 1984 runaway traverse incident, where battery lead vehicles' cannons slewed uncontrollably at maximum 60 degrees per second, shredding own missile pods in cascading secondary detonations that scorched 50 square meters of steppe and hurled 3-kilogram rocket fragments 200 meters, miraculously sparing crew hunkered behind armored bulkheads. Rival systems haunted every milestone triumph. U.S. M111 Avenger Humvees offered FIM-92 Stingers with no organic duns against saturation drone raids. German Flakpanzer Gepard twins pumped 35mm Oerlikon rounds to 3 kilometers but lacked missile reach for standoff Harrier jumps. French Crotal wheeled batteries slung 8-kilometer R-442 missiles sans close-in punch against pop-up Cobras, yet Tunguska's hybrid synergy reigned supreme in regimental air defense belts. 4,000 round-per-minute Tempests forcing A-10 Jinx into predictable climbouts exposed to missile envelopes. One platform equaling 3 Shilkas in steel tonnage, yet demanding dedicated 500-liter diesel tankers shadowing columns and railheads for 9-ton ammunition pallets crated like oversized coffins. Shipunov clashed relentlessly with VPK cost accountants over gallium arsenide shortages delaying hotshot production runs. Gryazev perfecting cannon dual-breach sequencing for seamless A670 feed transitions, while missile inertial gyros lagged navigation accuracy to within 2 meters at 10-kilometer terminals. Ulyanovsk factory floors idling amid perestroika material shortages until lucrative Indian contracts for Rajasthan frontier regiments revived assembly lines with hard currency infusions. Chechnya's Grozny urban cauldron of 2000 etched bloody vindication as Tunguska M1 batteries shredded Mi-24 hind swarms contesting presidential palace skies. 30mm streams punching armored cockpits and transmission decks at 800 meters slant, while laser-ranged salvos claimed Orlan-10 loitering UAVs circling minaret vantage points, though flanking Chechen RPG teams exploited low-ground blind spots behind undulating terrain to gut trailing vehicles with PG-7 VR tandem warheads. Yemen's fractious civil wars from 2014 witnessed export units mulch Saudi-supplied Scan Eagle drones over Sana'a suburbs, 30mm storms saturating quadcopter formations at 500 meters slant with Frag-T bursts, while 9 M311M pursued fixed-wing loiterers to 10 kilometers terminal. Indian Rajasthan brigades blunting Pakistani JF-17 mock raids during BrahMos coastal exercises, where Tunguska guns forced overspeed climbs into SA-6 envelopes. Ukraine theater from 2022 laid bare generational fault lines. Javelin fire teams flanking isolated batteries from forested reverse slopes. FPV kamikaze quadcopters with RPG-3000 warheads overwhelming radar slew rates of 40 degrees per second to trigger missile cook-offs in ready racks. Pantsir SM vertical launch successors stealing tracked niche thunder with 20-kilometer hypersonic envelopes and gallium nitride radars tracking 500 drone swarms simultaneously. Desperate M1 upgrades persisted into 2024 with 9 M311 M2 active radar homing seekers punching through hypersonic plasma sheaths, vertical cold launch tubes for confined urban ops. Yet drone economics tilted inexorably, where one Tunguska battery tallied $120 million against disposable quadcopters at $12,000 apiece, armed with machine gun feed motors. Kubinka's storied Polygon 3 shelters pristine Tunguska M1 under weathered canvas beside grizzled Shilka veterans, awestruck visitors dwarfed by twin barrels rising 3 meters skyward like silent sentinels, fingers tracing one RL-144 radome housings that once pierced blizzard clutter to monopulse track Mach 1 phantoms through mountain notches. Guides narrating Donguz infernos where prototypes immolated from belt-fed ammunition sympathy detonations, yet phoenix-like rose through Shipunov's unyielding genius and Gryazev's flawless cannon mechanics. Arkady Georgievich Shipunov faded peacefully in 2018 at 91 years young, his hybrid vision etched indelibly across battlefields from Pamir crags to Syrian deserts and Indian wastelands. The Gryazev-Shipunov partnership immortalized in 30mm roars that spared countless regiments from fiery aerial rains across 4 decades. Tunguska endures as Cold War hybrid apotheosis incarnate. Autocannons devoured the immediate ravenous horde clawing at treetops. Missiles reaped the distant reaper circling beyond gun reach, together forging skies that none dared breach with massed formations, until microelectronics and venture capital democratized air denial for $20,000 quadcopters. Layered lethality outlasted single-path specialist solutions from Gepards to Avengers, but evolution crowns no weapon eternal, only those adapting beyond their epoch. Drop a like if Tunguska's dual-fanged fury captivates your imagination. Comment your ultimate air defense dream match, Pantsir SM versus NASAMS in drone hell, or reloaded Gepards versus loitering munitions. Subscribe for raw, unfiltered sagas of era-defining war machines, engineering truth delivered without hype or sanitization.